The hills have eyes and human bullet sponges. Hi guys, and welcome to the final part of my Hills Have Eyes review series. This one was directed by Martin Weisz. You might remember him from such films as Grim Love and Squatters. In terms of actors, there was only one person in this I recognised. That was Daniela Alonso, who I believe was also in Wrong Turn 2, plus a whole bunch of other TV stuff that I just happen to remember her from. We also get one of the girls here who was in the Prom Night remake from 2008, but that's not saying a whole lot, and as such I don't feel any shame for the fact that I can't remember her name. The rest of the cast is mostly unknowns. So the story we get here, we've got a bunch of National Guardsmen and scientists at the beginning. They quickly get offed by the Mountain Men, and so another squadron of National Guardsmen are sent in to investigate. There's 9 of them this time, and that is where the proper movie begins. We follow this group of 9 as they go into the hills, realise that they're in over their heads, and it becomes a battle for survival against the cannibals. It's really that simple. There's no twists or kinks in the plot line in this. It literally is as straightforward as that. This movie could have been called Marines versus Cannibals. It really could have been. It starts very well. Our introduction to the characters in this is, so we see them on what we think is a real mission in Baghdad, but it turns out it's just a training exercise. I really like this deceit. I've seen it done in other movies as well, most notably in Never Say Never Again, when you think James Bond's on a real mission and it turns out that it's actually a training exercise. They pull off that same thing here, and I thought it was kind of cool. It was a little bit funny at the same time. The characters that you get in this movie are actually pretty fun. They're all young people. They're at the start of their careers in the National Guard service. None of them are annoying. We even get 2 or 3 pretty good characters, actually. I particularly liked the fat Latino guy who's angry all the time. We get somebody who's a little bit like Apone from Aliens, remember him? Nobody touched nothing. We get a guy who's sort of like that, leading this group, except he's about 15, 20 years younger maybe, and he doesn't quite have the Apone voice, but I liked him a lot as well. So, good set of characters, good simplistic horror setup, but could the film execute on its premise? So for the most part, this is a pretty good film, actually. I think the director does a very good job with it. If it's got one major problem, I'd say that the 2 sides in this are very unevenly matched. So on the one side, we've got these 9 National Guardsmen who've got M16s and sidearms, possibly. They are armed to the teeth, way more than horror characters usually are in this sort of film. On the other side, we've got a bunch of cannibals. I don't know how many of them there are, but they've got way less on their side than the National Guardsmen. And also one of the cannibals is blind. One of them is a traitor who tries to help the National Guardsmen at every opportunity. None of these cannibals can set traps, which might be consistent with the rest of the franchise, but still that would have helped them a little bit. So the 2 sides, it's just very, very uneven, I guess. But the film needs to have it so that the protagonists are whittled down, as is the tradition for this sort of movie. So, but it finds it really difficult to do that, and it has to come up with all these contrivances and stupid character decisions. There's this thing in this film where a character will be holding their M16, they'll be looking around, checking their angles, just checking there's nobody there or nobody there. They're covering their ass. And then they'll just lower their guard for like a second, and then a cannibal will come and get them. But it's like they'll come from a direction that the good guy was literally checking just a second ago. It just seems unlikely that they could be surprised like that. And this happens 2 or 3 times where you sort of doubt whether somebody could have been ambushed in that way. We also get several moments where characters just leave the main group. You know, that old horror trope where somebody just wanders off and they never come back. But it's so blatant what's about to happen when that occurs in this movie. You know, you get this one guy halfway through this. He's hardly spoken a line of dialogue up to this point, which is further evidence that he's about to die. But he says something like, "You guys are crazy going on. I'm out of here." Can't do the accent, sorry. And as soon as he says that, you know he's dead 2 minutes later, and guess what? He's dead 2 minutes later. And then later on, we get this other guy, the Latino guy, who's like, you can go and rescue that woman if you want, but I'm getting out of here right now. He spotted this way out that he thinks is a way out, but as soon as he does that, you just know we're headed for a repeat of what happened earlier in the movie, and sure enough, he's dead a couple of minutes later, blows himself up with dynamite, which is just a stupid way to go. This movie just really struggles to kill the good guys off. It needed to be a bit more creative, I think, given the fact that we go into a mine in this film. Could somebody have not died from a cave-in or a natural disaster or something like that? Just have one of the cannibals able to set some good traps or something. You know, at one point somebody gets this like dangerous looking spider on them, but it doesn't ultimately kill them. Maybe that could have killed one of them, you know. But it's very convenient how this film whittles it down from like 9 National Guardsmen just to like 2 or 3 at the end, I've got to say. The mine is actually a pretty good new location for this series, actually. What it means, though, is that we don't get as much of that really cool desert cinematography that we get in a lot of the earlier films. We still get some of that in the early stages here, but after about maybe 30, 40 minutes, we go into the mine and we literally never come out for the rest of the film, but it is a good location. It's like a rabbit warren, this place. Lots of rooms that look very different from each other. We've got chutes and spiders, and it's got a nice bit of atmosphere, this mine. I did kind of like it as somewhere different. Before I completely move on from the subject of stupid deaths, there's this one guy, he's randomly firing his M16 in all kinds of stupid directions. He's not shooting at anything, he's panic shooting basically, and he accidentally guns down one of his own comrades, and this was as close as I got during this film to getting mad, because the guy who dies in this scene is a really likeable character. It's just a really frustrating moment. There's nothing in the way of soundtrack, really. I can't remember anything musical about this film. No tunes, no nothing in that regard. The cannibals, I guess they're okay. It's your usual bunch of assorted, weird-looking people. There's one standout. It's a guy who looks a little bit rocky in his appearance. So I don't know if you've ever seen the film Thor Ragnarok. There's this guy made out of rocks. He's got an Australian accent. Well, there's a guy in this film who looks sort of like that, except obviously he's human. But because he's got this sort of rocky look, it means he can blend into the environment sometimes to fool the National Guardsmen. And I thought this was kind of a cool thing. The main bad of the movie, the final boss, if you like, he's very frustrating because he can just take so much punishment. He gets shot up, he gets cut, all sorts happens to this guy, and yet he just keeps coming back for one last scare, one last fight. I think the characters literally have to bash his face into a bloody pulp before we finally get to the point where he can't get up again. It's very frustrating, but ultimately, I did enjoy this film despite everything. It got to the end of it, got to the end credits, and I thought to myself, yeah, that was actually a pretty good little time there. You know, this film's like, it's one of those where you just feel like you've been to McDonald's for a burger and chips. It's not very sophisticated, but it does the trick for people who are into horror films. I didn't see this one when it came out of the cinema years ago. If I had, I probably would have walked home thinking, yeah, it was a good time. A bit silly on occasion, but a good time. And if they make a part 3, I would be absolutely fine with that. Time to show you the version of the film that I've got for this. Here is my Blu-ray copy of The Hills Have Eyes 2. The picture is stunning on this Blu-ray. There are also quite a few special features. Now, there's no director's commentary or anything like that, but it does have a lot of other stuff on it, stuff that I've not actually checked out yet. There's 4 deleted scenes, a gag reel, something called Mutant Attacks, birth of a graphic novel. I think there might be a graphic novel sort of that's loosely associated with this movie somehow. There's something called Exploring the Hills, the making of The Hills Have Eyes 2, little documentary there. Something called Fox Movie Channel Presents Life After Film School with Wes Craven. And an alternative ending. A lot of good stuff. I might actually keep this out in the sitting room and check some of these features out before I put the movie back in the cupboard sort of thing. Yeah, so quite impressed with this version of the film. I think it cost me maybe £7 or £8. Not bad. Right, a couple of things left to do. Firstly, we'll get to the bag of terror and then I'll put something else. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 3.5 bloody axes out of 5. Decent-ish horror sequel, nothing special, but I kind of enjoyed it actually. The other thing I quickly wanted to address before we wrap up today is my ranking of this franchise. Now, I do like to do separate videos for rankings, but in this instance there's only 4 films, and the rule that I go by on the channel is that I won't do an individual ranking video unless there's at least 5 movies to go with, and in this instance we've only got 4. So to just quickly let you know how I would rank the movies, in 4th spot I would have the 1985 Wes Craven sequel. I gave it 3 out of 5. That there's tons of issues with that film, really badly thought out dream sequences and what have you, but it's still kind of watchable as a decent sort of 80s slasher. In 3rd place, I've got the 2006 reboot. I gave that 3.5 out of 5. A very highly competent film, but it has too much recycled material from the original film. And I'll just pause a second because there's a plane going overhead. It really bugs me when this happens when I'm making a video. Go on, fly away. Okay, it's going. Right, so in 2nd place, the film I just reviewed today, The Hills Have Eyes 2 from 2007. Again, 3.5 out of 5. I just give this the nudge over the reboot because of the fact that it's mostly original content, and I just found it more exciting and enjoyable because of that, although I might admit the 2006 film is slightly better made. In 1st place, the original from 1977, Wes Craven's original film. I gave that one 4 out of 5. It's not a masterpiece by any means, but if I could only keep one Hills Have Eyes film for the rest of my life, it would be that one. So there we go. Right, that's the end of my Hills Have Eyes review series. Thank you for joining me. Some other stuff I've got coming up soon. I'm going to be doing The Descent 1 and 2, and also a film called Treehouse, and also a Vincent Price film that I've just had turn up in the post over the last few days. I will be getting back onto Hammer shortly as well with another Hammer review, and very soon I will be covering the Wrong Turn franchise as well. I'm really looking forward to that one. Right, so that's it for today. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.